And so remembering our lives is not important. It's only important because it's a sign of a healthy brain and reduced disruption in subconscious navigation, and a greater unity of self because self is no longer in experiences but is now here. But remembering our lives is super not important, because memories exist to navigate. But if consciousness is navigating life through the power of consciousness and not the restrictive programs of the unconscious body-mind, then it doesn't matter what has ever existed in the unconscious body-mind, because the true essence of self is taking over and rewriting it. If consciousness exists and operates independently of brain-body structures, then where is navigation actually coming from? And this is a very fascinating topic to explore, especially for me, because 2 years ago, I couldn't remember my entire life. And so it kind of, opens up these questions. What role do memories actually play in who we are and how we move about our lives, and how much power do we actually have within them? So I'm going to explore this from a few different angles, and I'm really excited to dive in. This is a great, great topic to explore. The ability to remember our lives is important for 3 reasons, and none of them have anything to do with being able to remember our lives. Okay, the first reason it's important to be able to have access to any kind of memories is because it's an indicator of a healthy brain. The brain being able to have these healthy functions for the different lobes in the brain, the different hemispheres in the brain, the hippocampus, and all of this stuff to be effectively functioning. Okay, and so the first reason that remembering our lives is important, even though it's not important to be able to remember our lives, is because it's a sign of a healthy brain, a brain that has all these different modalities of functionality, and all of them are effectively operating, and all of the information flowing through all of it is connecting. Okay, so different parts of the brain have these special functions, and they are functioning effectively, and additionally, there's all of this existing information, and all of it is effectively connecting. Okay, so 2 things there. Healthy brain functions. Okay, the second reason that being able to remember our lives, even though is important, even though remembering our lives is not important, as we will get to about where navigation is coming from, is because it's a sign that subconscious realms are providing navigation effectively. Okay, if we can't get to information, or if information isn't stored effectively, then it can disrupt navigation. Okay, so being able to remember our lives is important, even though remembering our lives is not important, because it's a sign of effective subconscious navigation. It means that those past experiences are not disrupting navigation in unfolding moments. The third reason it's important is because it's a sign that consciousness is fully present and united within itself. Okay, the essence of self, consciousness, is not the same thing as the brain-body structures, is not ever defined by experiences. But when we can remember the closure of experiences that are no longer existing, then it can be a sign that the parts of consciousness who were in those experiences, and the parts of consciousness who are flowing through the information in the brain-body structures created from those experiences, those parts of self-essence are fully here in a brand new present moment. Okay? So when we think about our lives, there's generally stories about them, you know, this happened and it made me this person, and this happened and I drew this conclusion about myself, and this happened and now I have this perception of the world, okay? But none of that is actually important, and we'll get to that in a second, exploring where navigation is actually coming from and why that matters. But being able to remember our lives is important because it's a sign that all the different miracles of the brain are in healthy functionality. It's a sign that experiences in the past or presently existing neural data is not disrupting subconscious navigation, or it is providing effective navigation, potentially. And the third and most important is that it has the ability to be a clue that there's greater unity of self-essence. Because if an experience happened and is no longer happening, and that is fully known by the unconscious body-mind, then it means that the parts of consciousness who were in those experiences and the parts of consciousness who are flowing through the brain-body structures carrying the information created from those experiences are now here in a brand new present moment. Okay? But being able to remember our lives is actually not important. Why? In the 3 subconscious layers model of the treasure maps I've created, there is great power in growing attachments with the inner life partner, the present moment inner experiencer, not the present day self, but the present moment experiencer. And the difference there is that the present day self has stories around it. You're defined by the egoic human perception of a self. You're defined by all of these components about who you believe your present day sense of human self to be. But the present moment inner experiencer is the actual self, not the experience. And then there's a greater ability to hone in on meeting attachment needs for yourself. So there's great power in growing attachments with the inner life partner and the inner child while being completely detached, zero attachments, with the inner best friend, which is the bridge between childhood and the present moment. Everything that's ever happened between childhood and the present moment of this exact moment, not 5 minutes ago, not 10 minutes ago, not 5 hours ago, not 5 days ago, but this exact moment right here. Everything from childhood to this exact brand new present now moment is associated with the inner best friend in this model I've created. And so there's great power in being attached to the inner life partner and being attached to the inner child and being completely detached from the inner best friend. Where is navigation coming from? Back to the first question, okay? Is navigation coming from automated brain-body activity? Are you defined by your thoughts, your feelings, your action patterns? Is navigation regarding your sense of self and how you maneuver your reality? Is navigation coming from subconscious realms where past experiences have created information that now provide you with an automated interpretation of reality? Is that where your navigation comes from? If so, then the inner best friend, the second subconscious layer, is massive, and the inner child and the inner life partner are really, really small. And this restricts the flow of consciousness, who is the true essence of self. Because from childhood, which is a clean slate on life, nothing had happened yet. There was no unconscious body-mind developed. There were no neural pathways in the brain telling you all these messages. The brain hadn't fully developed yet. There was no individualized sense of self just yet. Okay, going like all the way back to original neurodevelopment. And in the present moment, if there are no automations, then there are no stories. Clean slate. So childhood, clean slate. Present moment, clean slate. Everything in between, stories, judgments, perceptions, conclusions, judgments, limitation. And so being able to remember our lives can be considered important because it can be a sign of the brain having healthy functions. Your hippocampus is working well. Maybe your brain hemispheres are connected, whatnot. And it's a sign that there's no disruptions of navigation. It's like, there's all this information and it's all connected. So optimal navigation. And it can be a sign that more parts are here, because if past experiences couldn't be remembered as being over, or they couldn't be remembered at all, then there could be parts flowing through neural wiring or parts stuck in past experiences who aren't associated with the present moment. But remembering our lives is not important. Remembering our lives is not important. Because the clean slate is in that childhood state before any of life had happened, and in the present moment state where there's just a present moment. There's no stories, there's no perceptions, there's no judgments, there's no conclusions. It's just a moment that hasn't ever happened before. There's no projections, there's no distortions. So being able to remember our lives really is not important. But then that means navigation would need to come from somewhere else other than the unconscious body-mind. Okay? Check with me here. The unconscious body-mind has two jobs: navigation, regulation. Neuroscience discovered that the purpose of memories is to navigate present and potential moments. Neuroscientifically speaking, memories do not exist to store the past. They're a navigational tool for the brain and the body. Okay? If you're cooking and you burn your hand on a stove, that memory helps you navigate life in the next moment you're using the stove to help you prevent yourself from burning your hand again. That was one example, of course. Okay? If you have, if you're friends with someone and then you walk up to have a conversation with them, you know who they are and you know what topics you like to talk about and you know what boundaries you have within your relationship, or, whatever it might be, and it helps you navigate that moment. But if navigation does not come from the unconscious body-mind, which is automatic, projected, and based on experiences that have already happened, then where is navigation coming from? Or where could navigation come from? Okay? Consciousness, the true essence of self, exists and operates independently of brain-body structures. Okay? So there's the brain and the body, and there's all this information from all of life that's navigating and regulating its own existence. But then there's the actual self, who has nothing to do with any of that. And if the actual self can connect with its actual self of divinity, divine consciousness, the universal intelligence, the infinite intelligence, the eternal intelligence of life force throughout the cosmos status, however you want to describe it, then there holds the power and the potential for the self to stream navigation in from a source outside of the unconscious body-mind. but it's also the same source flowing through the unconscious body-mind, just without any of the restrictions based on how it's wired. Okay, so if the brain and the body are wired a certain way, then they're going to navigate and regulate existence in that exact way. Okay, there is an infinite intelligence that's helping organize all of it, even if it might be disrupted a bit. Okay, but consciousness is that pure essence that's not touched by anything else. Just like in childhood, before the unconscious body-mind had been written, and just like in the present moment, if it's not affected by any experiences that have previously occurred. Okay? So if consciousness exists and operates independently of brain-body structures, then it can stream navigation from a higher source than the unconscious body-mind. Kind of a cool topic, huh? Kind of a cool exploration. If the true essence of self is completely independent of all experiences that have ever happened in the human life, the true self is completely independent of all brain-body activity, connection between the brain hemispheres, the forebrain, the hindbrain, the cerebrum, and the cerebellum. If the true essence of self is completely independent of hundreds of trillions of energetic pathways carrying information from every nanosecond of life since before you can remember, literally, from infancy. If the self is independent of all of that, then it can choose a navigation that is independent of all of that automated information. And then, remembering your life is super irrelevant because you're navigating now moments independently of anything that's ever happened before. And this is the liberation of consciousness. Liberated consciousness and loving liberation are big themes in the implicit revelations case study and the work that I love investing in. And so in this model, ironically, not the liberated consciousness diagram, but in the 3 subconscious layers diagram, there is great power in growing attachments with the inner life partner, the present moment self, and the inner child, that core foundational, true, authentic essence of self that exists or would have existed if the life stuff never happened. Disrupted moments of attachment well-being never happened. But also, simultaneously, being completely, 100% detached, no attachments, with the inner best friend, which is connected with every moment that has ever happened between the childhood, or the better times of childhood, if there were any, and the present moment. And so when there's neurodevelopment, there's just like this raw foundation. There is no unconscious body-mind sculpted. There's just this pure divine essence with infinite possibility, infinite potential. And then experience comes in, and attachment development comes in, and social engagement comes in, and the self is restricted and confined by an unconscious body-mind that is wired with disruptions of attachment well-being. And unconscious memories are navigating and regulating existence, but we don't really know that. There's not this big awareness about the fact that that's happening. And then teenage comes, and teenagehood years are really just developed atop how attachment development happened between ages 2 and 12. Okay? You start to be able to create conscious memories around age 2-ish as the left brain kind of kicks in. Before that, things are processed very implicitly, episodically. There isn't a sense of self that's aware yet. Things are being stored, but unconsciously. And so everything that happens between ages 2 and 12 creates this core foundation of the unconscious body-mind. Then everything that happens in teenagehood is really just a response to the attachment development that happened between ages 2 and 12. And then everything that happens in every year of adulthood is really just a response to the attachment well-being that's at the foundation of the unconscious body-mind associated with information between ages 2 and 12. Ages 2 and 12. And so sometimes in my case study notes or something, I'll describe something as, having been associated with or happened by or been experienced by or something, my inner best friend. And I acknowledge that there were experiences and it did create information that are stored to some degree throughout the cells of my beingness, but also, they have nothing to do with me and can't touch me, can't affect my navigation or regulation, can't determine who I am, what I'm worth, or what I'm capable of, can't impact the self that I am choosing to perceive and expand into. And that's where the power of divine spirit dissolves human identities and egoic perceptions and steps into the expansion of its infinite nature. Because until that point, the inner best friend is determining reality. The inner best friend holds all the stories, all the judgments, all the perceptions, all the worldviews, all the restricted confines of what reality is or is supposed to be, or can be, or cannot be. And it holds all of the density. We are light beings. Our natural state is feeling light as a feather in our actual bodies. Feeling light as a feather in our actual bodies. Have you ever seen like an agile dancer who's just fully absorbed in the dance? You can watch them and they almost seem like a feather moving through the breeze. They're light, they're fluid, they're flexible, they're agile. And although we are not all meant to be professional dancers, our bodies are meant to feel that lightness all of the time. That's part of the divine plan, is for our bodies to be light bodies. Light, they're light. We're meant to feel lightness in our actual bodies. But when there are stories held, when the inner best friend has determined the automated navigation for the essence of the self, then there is density. And our bodies feel heavy and physical and weighed down by gravity. And so remembering our lives is not important. It's only important because it's a sign of a healthy brain and reduced disruption in subconscious navigation and a greater unity of self because self is no longer in experiences but is now here. But remembering our lives is super not important. Because memories exist to navigate. But if consciousness is navigating life through the power of consciousness and not the restrictive programs of the unconscious body-mind, then it doesn't matter what has ever existed in the unconscious body-mind because the true essence of self is taking over and rewriting it. And that's one of my favorite things about so many of the practices I've been grateful and blessed to develop through the implicit revelations is that so much of it allows you to rewrite the unconscious body-mind, rewrite past experiences, rewrite hundreds of trillions of energetic pathways in the brain and body, rewrite all of this implicit subconscious neural navigation information without touching any of it, without looking at any of it. And the pathways are so effective, they're unfathomable. There's actually genuinely no words to articulate how effective it is to actually rewrite your own existence so that only love is able to touch you anymore. If there had never been any moments of unfulfilled attachment needs, then there would just be that liberated inner child and that liberated present moment self without any stories, judgments, perceptions, limitations, anything. Just the full liberation of the spirit of the true self. So by growing attachments from the observational self to the inner life partner and to the inner child, while practicing total detachment through distinction and connection between self aspects, total detachment from the inner best friend, we close in that gap and we liberate the self. And then the unconscious body-mind provides effective navigation because it's superseded by a greater power. A power that's greater than years and years and years of experiences that have affected the information inside of it. The unconscious body-mind is superseded by a greater power than any experiences, any automated messages, any instinctive, innate, automatic types of brain-body wiring. And then navigation isn't coming from the unconscious body-mind. It's coming from divine consciousness through the unconscious body-mind. And that opens so many incredible doorways to experiencing life in fresh ways. Because when there are children, everything is a brand new experience. You don't know what an apple is. You don't know what grass is. You don't know what a blue sky is. You've never seen rain before. You've never taken a shower before. You've never looked at yourself in a mirror and explored the existence of your own self. You've never pet a rabbit or a dog or a cat or a horse before. You've never tasted food before. You've never talked to communicate a message that is unique to who you are before. And all of these things that just happen and they're just whatever, they become brand new. And with that, boundless joy and infinite potential without restrictions based on automations. Okay? So, key takeaways. Remembering our lives is not important. It is only important because it is a sign of healthy brain functions, reduced disruption in subconscious navigation, and the unity of self, where self is no longer in those experiences but is now here. But the unconscious body-mind's key jobs are to provide navigation and regulation. But if consciousness exists and operates independently of brain-body structures, and navigation and regulation are actually determined by the divine essence of the true self instead of automated programs in the unconscious body-mind, then it doesn't really matter if you can or can't remember your life, which is profound for me to say because 2 years ago, I literally could not remember any of my life. And now I can, but it doesn't matter because none of it has anything to do with who I really am. This concept can actually be applied as the observational self grows attachments with the inner life partner, the present moment inner experiencer, and the inner child, or the foundational essence of the childhood self that has those original attachment needs. And by practicing detachment through distinction and connection between self aspects, practicing detachment with the inner best friend, who is associated with all of the experiences, all of the memories, all of the neural wiring, all of the stories, all of the everything between childhood and the present moment, including teenagehood. Childhood here is referred to between ages 2 and 12. So even teenagehood and all through adulthood and last week and last month and last year and 5 years ago, all of that is associated with the inner best friend. And when we practice being detached, opposite of attached, detached from the inner best friend, then the inner child and the inner life partner have a greater opportunity to be lovingly liberated. And then the true essence of self can emerge as consciousness steps forward into all that it truly is without being restricted or reduced by any past experiences that have created information in the unconscious body-mind. And then navigation and regulation come from a power, a higher source of infinite intelligence than the automations of the unconscious body-mind, and that process actually rewires and upgrades the unconscious body-mind so that it can be a more supportive home and house for the divine essence of the true self. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being you. Have a beautiful and blessed healing journey day.